One more will not. Oh, look out. Oh, Reigns trying to overpower the Undertaker. And Undertaker trying to counter, get his legs up.
When a wrestler returns from taking time off from in-ring competition, that wrestler may not perform like they once did. A ring rust is a real thing, and in wrestling, time off can be the biggest killer for a wrestler. Over the years, numerous wrestlers have taken time off for injuries or come out of retirement and come back with less than stellar performances. But which wrestlers had the worst ring rust? Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 wrestlers who returned with serious ring rust. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 1. The British Bulldog. The British Bulldog's 1999 return to television was a complete disaster on all fronts. The Bulldog had come back to the WWE following a disastrous WCW run which included a back injury thanks to a malfunctioning trapdoor. This meant that the Bulldog was less mobile than he was in the years prior. Bulldog, between leaving WCW and rejoining WWE, had attained a lot of ring rust, and unfortunately it showed extremely quickly upon his return. The Bizarre One would return in September of 1999 and would begin to wrestle in jeans instead of his trademark Union Jack attire, and his theme music would be changed from Rule Britannia to a generic rock song. That's probably not his fault though. Initially, Bulldog spent his time wrestling in the hardcore division before he was given a shot in the main event. He would be part of a six-pack challenge at Unforgiven in 1999, however his performance was extremely poor and he looked exhausted just after a couple of spots. Following a pay-per-view match with The Rock where it looked like The Rock was carrying the veteran throughout, Bulldog would linger around the lower mid-card before being released a couple of months later. Number 2. Batista. Batista's 2014 return possibly couldn't have come at a worse time. WWE had plans for the Animal to come back as a massive babyface in main event WrestleMania 30 against Randy Orton.
Dave!
But the issue was that Daniel Bryan had reached his peak of popularity,
And the yes movement gets what it wants. Look at that.
meaning they were forced to change their plans for the star of Guardians of the Galaxy. But another issue was that Batista had extremely bad ring rust. His first singles match on pay-per-view against Alberto Del Rio was a complete disaster. Batista was winded minutes in and found himself sucking air throughout the majority of the match. But he did indeed work on his cardio and ensured that he got in solid in-ring shape, as Batista's match at WrestleMania, Extreme Rules and Payback were of much better quality. Number 3. Tatanka. WWE's decision to bring back Tatanka in 2005 was no doubt an interesting one. Tatanka's initial run was nothing special and it was unclear what he could add to a stacked roster in 2005. Tatanka would return and would begin a bizarre team with Matt Hardy. However, it was clear early on that Tatanka didn't have the in-ring ability to match a 2005 product. He had extreme ring rust and clearly had no clue how to work a style appropriate for 2005's wrestling product. He would go on to have awful matches with the likes of The Miz and Simon Dean before the WWE decided to turn him heel, which to the shock of no one didn't light the world on fire. Number 4. The Undertaker. Now, although The Undertaker managed to have a year off and come back with a stellar WrestleMania match between the years of 2010 and 13, after that time period, ring rust seriously hit the wrestling legend. As he admitted on the hit WWE Network documentary series The Last Ride, he stated that wrestling once a year led to a dramatic ring rust which he found very hard to shake off. His matches with the likes of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania all showed his ring rust, as The Undertaker was sloppy throughout. Following the Reigns match, he decided to get back into in-ring shape by working out at the WWE Performance Center. This then led to two great performances at Extreme Rules 2019 and WrestleMania 36 respectively. Although it's safe to say there wasn't much wrestling at his match at WrestleMania 36. Plus, it was pre-taped after all. Number 5. Road Warrior Animal. Now, another wrestler that WWE decided to bring back into the mix in mid-2000s was Road Warrior Animal. Why this was done was a little unclear, but it served little purpose other than to deliver some nostalgia. The one half of the Road Warriors would return as a babyface and would form a team with Matt Hardy. The problem was that Animal had very bad ring rust and his performances were less than great. Similar to Tatanka, WWE decided to turn him heel and allowed him to ditch the Road Warrior persona, but this obviously didn't magically fix Animal's ring rust. Number 6. The Rock. The Rock's return in 2011 was a smashing success. His matches broke records with John Cena at WrestleMania 28, which in turn became the most successful WrestleMania event of all time.
It is thunderous!
Now, although his return was no doubt a commercial success, did have a lot of ring rust when he returned in 2011. His return match would be at Survivor Series as he would team with Cena against Awesome Truth. The logic behind the tag match was that it would allow The Rock to adjust to having 7 years away from the ring. It worked to an extent, but whenever The Rock would tag in, you could just see the ring rust coming to the surface. The Rock would then take another 5 months off and would then have the aforementioned WrestleMania singles match with John Cena. Thankfully, his ring rust had dramatically improved, as it was reported that The Rock was doing in-ring drills with former WWE star Curtis Axel. The Rock would then take almost a year off before returning for a match with CM Punk at the Royal Rumble. The ring rust would somewhat return here, and for the next 3 matches on consecutive pay-per-view events, The Rock would suffer from sucking wind and needing to go to rest spots extremely early on in the match. Number 7. Shawn Michaels. Now, there was a lot of criticism thrown towards Shawn Michaels for deciding to come out of retirement in 2018, simply doing it for the Saudi payday.
If you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
The decision for HBK to come out of retirement was discussed by him during an appearance on the State of Combat podcast. He stated, "The most important thing to me was being there with Hunter. More than any reason at all, that is why I did it. As silly as it sounds, I'm so fortunate to have the last ride with your best friend in the sunset, which is what I wanted to do with him. I was pretty certain, I know me, but I've always been a bit concerned saying it out loud for fear that it was the one time that I can't. I've always felt confident about doing my parts, to be perfectly honest." The match itself was an utter disaster on all accounts, from Triple H tearing his pec muscle mid-match to Kane's mask falling off and awkwardly trying to find it at ringside. HBK, however, showed a lot of ring rust, as after 8 years away, an older, slimmer HBK just couldn't deliver. Now, HBK did officially retire again and hasn't wrestled in WWE since that fateful night in 2018. Number 8. Brie Bella. Brie Bella initially retired at WrestleMania 32, but this was before she decided to come out of retirement as part of the build to the first ever WWE Women's exclusive pay-per-view known as Evolution. The issue was that the 2 years away resulted in drastic ring rust for Brie that was hugely detrimental to her and her co-workers. On her first match back, she flubbed a dive to the outside and then managed to kick Liv Morgan straight in the face, knocking her out cold in the process. In relation to the ring rust and impact of that said ring rust, Brie Bella had this to say during a 2018 interview. "With any type of physical body change, it changes so much. Even last week on Raw when I did the dive and it was less momentum than I should have had, I forgot that I'm 10 pounds heavier than what I was. Gravity doesn't lie. It was a little different for me. I don't mind if I fail or if I succeed. No matter what, I want to look back with no regrets. If I fail, last week for example, I went to sleep at night and I was kinda bummed out, but I learned something about myself. I learned where my body is at, where I'm at." Number 9. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's 2002 WWE Returns started off incredibly well. An incredible match with The Rock at WrestleMania 18 made fans believe that the Hulkster was back and better than ever. Sadly, following WrestleMania, the ring rust of being away from WWE and working a part-time schedule in WCW caught up to him. Matches with Triple H and Ric Flair all exposed the ring rust as Hogan was sloppy by way of forgetting spots and being blown up early on. Then at the 2002 Judgment Day pay-per-view, Hogan wrestled The Undertaker for the WWE title. This really exposed Hogan's limitations and his ring rust, as the match was poorly received and featured one of the most infamous chokeslam bloopers of all time. And number 10, Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner in theory shouldn't have had much ring rust by the time he made his WWE return in 2002. Steiner was in WCW until the bitter end and then worked the independent shows continuously throughout 2001 and 2002 until his return surfaced. But for some reason, Steiner just didn't work in WWE at the time. His matches were terrible and he seemingly made multiple errors in every single match. Most notable his match with Triple H at the 2003 Royal Rumble, which is one of the worst received matches in WWE history. Steiner was all over the place in the match and he was even falling over during certain spots. His performance was so bad that during the rematch between the two men at the following month's No Way Out pay-per-view, the crowd audibly turned on Steiner. WWE would then remove Steiner from their WrestleMania plans due to his poor performances, and following WrestleMania, he would be positioned in the mid-card until his WWE contract ran out in 2004. But there you have it guys, 10 WWE wrestlers who returned with serious ring rust. Are there any we're missing out? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.